The diplomatic vessel Celestial Horizon hummed with a barely contained sense of resignation. Its primary occupant, Zarak, settled into the command chair with the practiced wariness of a career diplomat who had seen too much and been appreciated too little. The holographic displays flickered to life, casting an ethereal blue glow across the ship's minimalist interior. Another mission. Another routine evaluation. Zarak's species, the Valthari, were known throughout the Galactic Concordance for their meticulous approach to interspecies relations. Tall and lithe, with skin the color of burnished silver and eyes that seemed to shift between liquid mercury and deep obsidian, Zarak represented the pinnacle of diplomatic training. Years of service had etched lines of experience across features that remained otherwise impeccably composed. The latest communique from the Concordance headquarters scrolled across the primary display. Earth, a planet so young, so chaotic, that most serious diplomatic corps considered it little more than a curiosity. The assignment felt like a gentle rebuke, a way of pushing Zarak to the periphery after a series of controversial recommendations that had challenged the Concordance's long-standing protocols. Incoming data stream, the ship's quantum intelligence announced, its voice a neutral blend of tones that defied traditional gender or emotional markers. Preliminary planetary scan commencing. Zarak leaned forward, fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The initial data burst was nothing short of bewildering. Multiple communication networks, conflicting information sources, simultaneous expressions of remarkable technological achievement, and stunning social discord. Where most species developed with a unified trajectory, humans seemed to exist in a constant state of controlled chaos. The ship's advanced sensors began peeling back layers of planetary information. Satellite networks, digital communication grids, vast information repositories that seemed to contradict themselves with every parsed byte of data. Military installations existed alongside humanitarian networks. Technological research centers sat mere kilometers from regions struggling with basic infrastructure. Fascinating, Zarak muttered, a rare moment of verbal expression escaping the typically reserved diplomat. The Concordance's standard evaluation protocols seemed woefully inadequate for this planet. Typically, a preliminary scan would identify a species' potential for galactic integration based on technological advancement, social cohesion, and potential threat levels. Earth defied every standard metric. Quantum intelligence continued its report. Preliminary threat assessment. Inconclusive. Species demonstrates simultaneous capacity for extreme violence and unprecedented cooperation. Technological development shows exponential and unpredictable growth patterns. Zarak's fingers traced a complex pattern on the holographic display, pulling up additional layers of information. The planet's recent history read like a complex tapestry of contradiction. Humans had developed nuclear technology and immediately created international frameworks to prevent its misuse. They had explored the depths of their own planet while simultaneously reaching toward the stars. They had created systems of global communication that could unite or divide with equal efficiency. Most intriguing were the glimpses of human creativity, art that challenged perception, scientific theories that rewrote understanding of fundamental universal principles, social movements that transformed entire cultural landscapes. This is not a standard evaluation. Zarak spoke aloud, more to break the ship's contemplative silence than to communicate with the quantum intelligence. This is going to be something different. The celestial horizon continued its approach, cutting through the vast emptiness of space with a precision that belied the complexity of its mission. One diplomatic vessel, one planet, countless possibilities. Zarak knew, with a certainty that went beyond professional training, that this mission would change everything. The Concordance thought it was sending an experienced diplomat to evaluate a primitive species. They had no idea what was coming. The research facility stood as a testament to human contradiction. Nestled in the New Mexico desert, the Advanced Xenological Research Institute thrummed with an energy that defied traditional scientific expectations. Dr. Emily Rodriguez moved between holographic displays with a grace that belied the intensity of her focus. Her current project existed at the razor's edge of human understanding, preparing for potential first contact scenarios. Most of her colleagues viewed the work as an academic exercise. Emily knew better. The universe was vast, and humanity's curiosity knew no bounds. A notification pinged on her primary display. Unusual electromagnetic signatures. Quantum entanglement patterns that didn't match any known terrestrial or extraterrestrial technology. Her fingers flew across the interface, pulling up layers of data that most researchers would have dismissed as computational noise. "Computer," she called out, her voice steady. "Run a comprehensive spectral analysis on the latest data stream. Cross-reference with our xenolinguistic predictive models." The facility's quantum computing system, a marvel of human engineering that had taken a decade to develop, began processing information at speeds that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Emily took a moment to appreciate the irony. Humanity had spent millennia looking up at the stars, and now they were preparing to speak back. Her team was a microcosm of human potential. Dr. Marcus Chen, a quantum physicist with a background in comparative mythology. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood, a former military intelligence officer who now specialized in synapsological prediction. Dr. Kwame Osai, a computational linguist who had revolutionized machine translation algorithms. They were an impossible team. The kind of collaborative unit that should have been a bureaucratic nightmare, but instead produced breakthrough after breakthrough. The computer's analysis completed with a soft chime. Emily's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the results. Something was different. The electromagnetic signature showed signs of deliberate communication. Not random noise, not natural phenomenon, but something constructed. "Impossible," she muttered, though her tone suggested excitement rather than disbelief. Lieutenant Blackwood approached, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. "You've got that look," she said. It was both a statement and a question. Emily pointed to the display. "These patterns, they're not random. There's structure here. Intentionality." The military-trained analyst leaned in, her tactical assessment overlaying Emily's theoretical approach. "Deliberate communication," Blackwood confirmed. "But from where?" Dr. Chen joined them, his eyes already analyzing the data from multiple perspectives. "Not just from where," he corrected, "but how." These communication patterns suggest a level of technological sophistication that shouldn't be possible with our current understanding. The research facility seemed to hold its breath. Decades of preparation, thousands of theoretical models, countless simulations, and now, potentially, the first real indication of something beyond human understanding. Emily's mind raced through possibilities. First contact scenarios they had developed ranged from the optimistic to the terrifyingly pragmatic. But none of them had truly prepared for the moment when theory might transform into reality. "We need to verify," she said, her voice cutting through the building tension. "Full spectrum analysis, quantum pattern recognition, linguistic deconstruction." The team moved with a synchronicity that spoke to years of working together. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to collaborate, to bridge seemingly impossible gaps of understanding. As the first wave of comprehensive data began to compile, Emily Rodriguez understood something profound. This was more than a scientific discovery. This was a moment that could redefine humanity's place in the universe. The stars seemed to wait, holding their collective breath. The United Nations Emergency Conference Room buzzed with a tension that defied diplomatic protocol. Representatives from every major world power sat alongside scientists, military strategists, and cultural experts. At the center of it all, Dr. Emily Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that showed the approaching diplomatic vessel. Zarak's ship had entered Earth's orbital range, triggering a response protocol that had been decades in preparation. This was no mere theoretical exercise. First contact was imminent. "We have precisely one opportunity to demonstrate humanity's potential," Emily said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. "Every action, every word will be scrutinized." Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood leaned forward, her military background evident in her precise posture. Traditional diplomatic approaches won't work, she observed. We're dealing with a civilization capable of interstellar travel. We need to be unpredictable. Dr. Marcus Chen nodded, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface. Unpredictability is our strength. They'll expect a structured, hierarchical response. Instead, we'll show them our complexity. The preliminary communication protocols had been a nightmare of international negotiation. How does one speak for an entire planet? How do you represent the complexity of human existence in a single diplomatic engagement? The answer, they had decided, was to not even try. A unique team had been assembled. Not just diplomats or scientists, but a deliberately diverse group that could showcase humanity's multifaceted nature. Emily Rodriguez, a scientist with a background in sinological studies. Marcus Chen, a quantum physicist with expertise in communication theory. Sarah Blackwood, a military strategist with a deep understanding of conflict resolution. Dr. Kwame Osai, a linguist specializing in cross-cultural communication. And one more critical member, Elena Martinez, a human rights lawyer with a reputation for challenging established systems. As the alien vessel began its approach, the team prepared their most unconventional strategy yet. Instead of a carefully crafted, sanitized diplomatic message, they would present a living, breathing representation of human potential. The first communication would be a deliberately complex transmission. Scientific data intertwined with artistic expressions, mathematical equations alongside poetry, military strategic analyses juxtaposed with humanitarian mission reports. They'd want to understand us, Elena Martinez said, a slight smile crossing her face. We'll give them something truly impossible to understand. The quantum communication array hummed to life. Xerox vessel would receive a transmission that defied every standard first contact protocol. Mathematical proofs written in the style of Shakespearean sonnets. Quantum mechanics explained through interpretive dance notation. Humanitarian mission reports encoded with musical compositions. Lieutenant Blackwood had argued for this approach most passionately. We're not going to present a sanitized version of humanity, she had said during their planning sessions. We're going to show them exactly who we are. Messy, complicated, brilliant, and utterly unpredictable. As the transmission began, the room held its collective breath. On the celestial horizon, Xerox watched in stunned silence as the most bizarre communication in galactic diplomatic history unfolded. The quantum intelligence began analyzing the transmission, its systems struggling to process the intentional complexity. This was no standard first contact scenario. This was humanity announcing its presence to the universe in the most human way possible, by completely shattering every expectation. The universe would never be the same. The quantum communication network erupted with alarm. 12 star systems, 17 different species, a cascading conflict that threatened to unravel the delicate fabric of galactic stability. The Concordance Emergency Council convened in a state of near panic. Ancient diplomatic protocols crumbled in the face of a conflict that defied traditional resolution methods. Economic warfare, territorial disputes, and centuries of accumulated grievances had finally reached a breaking point. Dr. Emily Rodriguez watched the holographic displays with an intensity that belied the seemingly impossible challenge before them. The human team had been unexpectedly invited to contribute to the crisis resolution, a move that shocked both human and galactic representatives. We're not here to follow rules, Emily said to her team. We're here to solve the problem. Dr. Marcus Chen began mapping the conflict's intricate web of relationships. It wasn't just a military or diplomatic challenge. It was a complex system of interconnected grievances, economic dependencies, and cultural misunderstandings. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood analyzed the military positioning. Traditional conflict resolution won't work, she noted. We need something completely unexpected. The crisis centered on the Nexus Corridor, a critical trade route that connected multiple galactic civilizations. What had begun as a minor territorial dispute had escalated into a potential full-scale interstellar conflict. Centuries of diplomatic tension had created a powder keg that seemed impossible to defuse. Elena Martinez, the human rights lawyer, saw the conflict differently. It's not about territory, she argued. It's about recognition, about being heard. Their solution would become known as the Nexus Protocol, an approach so radical that it initially seemed impossible. Instead of traditional negotiation, the human team proposed a comprehensive restructuring that addressed the root causes of the conflict. They used advanced AI to model potential outcomes, but unlike previous computational approaches, their system incorporated emotional intelligence, cultural context, and human creativity. The AI they developed wasn't just a calculation machine. It was a diplomatic algorithm that could understand nuance, recognize psychological patterns, and propose solutions that went beyond zero-sum thinking. Zarok watched in disbelief as the human team began to implement their strategy. They weren't just proposing the solution, they were rewriting the entire framework of galactic conflict resolution. The Nexus Protocol involved a complete economic restructuring that created mutual dependencies, cultural exchange programs designed to break down long-standing misunderstandings, a new governance model that gave voice to smaller, marginalized civilizations, an adaptive conflict resolution system that could evolve in real time. "This is madness," one Concordance elder proclaimed. Emily Rodriguez simply smiled. "This is human problem-solving." The implementation began. Advanced quantum communication networks spread the proposed solution. Economic algorithms recalculated trade routes. Cultural databases began cross-referencing historical conflicts and potential resolution paths. What should have taken decades happened in weeks. Tensions began to dissolve. Economic barriers crumbled. Cultural exchanges revealed common ground where only conflict had existed before. Zarok realized something profound was happening. The humans weren't just solving a conflict. They were demonstrating an entirely new approach to galactic cooperation. As the final protocols were implemented, the impossible became reality. 12 star systems, 17 different species, one unprecedented solution. The universe watched in stunned silence. The Galactic Research Symposium had never witnessed anything like this. Representatives from 17 different species gathered to understand the unprecedented resolution of the Nexus Corridor conflict. At the center of the proceedings sat Dr. Emily Rodriguez, her presence both a challenge and an invitation. Zarok observed from the diplomatic observation deck, fascinated by the unfolding dynamics. The human approach defied every established protocol of scientific and diplomatic engagement. Dr. Marcus Chen presented their methodology, not as a rigid academic paper, but as a living, breathing narrative of problem-solving. He wove together quantum physics, cultural anthropology, and what could only be described as creative intuition. Each slide was a work of art, each explanation a journey that challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligence and cooperation. "Unpredictability is not a weakness," Chen explained, his voice calm and resolute. "It is the most sophisticated form of adaptive intelligence." The symposium attendees represented millennia of technological advancement, crystalline beings from the Proxima cluster, silicon-based life forms from the Andromeda Computational Collective, energy-based entities from the quantum resonance matrices. Each had developed sophisticated methods of communication, problem-solving, and societal organization. Yet none had developed anything like the human approach. Elena Martinez took the stage next, a human rights lawyer turned galactic conflict mediator. She demonstrated how emotional intelligence could be as powerful as any technological solution. She broke down the Nexus Corridor resolution not through statistical analysis, but through the stories of individual beings whose lives had been transformed. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood presented the military strategic implications. Where other civilizations saw conflict as a zero-sum game, humans saw an opportunity for mutual growth. Her presentation revealed how human military doctrine had evolved from conquest to collaboration, from destruction to reconstruction. Zarok felt a fundamental shift occurring. This was more than a diplomatic presentation. This was a reimagining of what intelligent life could be. The human team demonstrated a cognitive flexibility that defied traditional understanding. They didn't just solve problems, they transformed the very nature of problem solving. Where other species saw boundaries, humans saw opportunities. Where others saw limitations, humans saw potential. Dr. Kwame Osei explained the linguistic breakthrough that had made the Nexus Protocol possible. It wasn't just about translation. It was about understanding the emotional and cultural context behind communication. Humans had developed a communication model that could bridge not just language barriers, but fundamental differences in perception and experience. "We don't just communicate," Osei said. "We connect." The symposium became something more than a scientific conference. It was a moment of collective reimagining. Species that had existed in careful isolation for millennia began to see possibilities they had never considered. Emily Rodriguez's final presentation was the most profound. She didn't present data or strategies. Instead, she shared a simple truth. Humanity's greatest strength was its ability to embrace complexity, to find beauty in contradiction, to transform challenges into opportunities. Zarak watched as the diplomatic landscape fundamentally transformed. The Galactic Concordance's rigid structures began to show signs of adaptation. Protocols that had existed for thousands of years started to change. The human variable was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. As the symposium concluded, something unprecedented happened. Representatives from multiple species approached the human team, not as diplomatic formality, but with genuine curiosity, with hope. The universe was changing, and humanity was leading the way. The Concordance Central Chamber was a monument to millennia of established galactic diplomacy. Crystalline walls reflected centuries of carefully maintained protocols. Holographic archives documented every diplomatic interaction since the founding of the Intergalactic Council. Zarak stood at the center of this historical nexus, preparing to challenge everything the Concordance believed about first contact and species integration. The conservative elements of the diplomatic course had mobilized quickly. Reports from the Nexus Corridor resolution were being systematically dismissed, marginalized, buried beneath layers of bureaucratic resistance. Traditional diplomatic channels worked to minimize the human breakthrough, to preserve the existing power structures. The humans represent an unacceptable variable, Chancellor Vexna argued, her multi-layered consciousness projecting disapproval across the chamber. Their methods are chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. Zarak knew this moment would define everything. The comprehensive dossier compiled on human potential sat as a holographic display, a weapon of pure information. Danger. Zarak's response cut through the chamber's tension, or evolution. The presentation began, not with cold statistical analysis, but with a living, breathing narrative of human potential. Each piece of evidence was more than data. It was a story of adaptation, of transformation. Military strategies that prioritized prevention over conflict, scientific breakthroughs that emerged from collaborative thinking, cultural movements that had transformed entire societal structures, economic models that created mutual benefit instead of zero-sum competition. Dr. Emily Rodriguez had prepared Zarak meticulously. "Show them who we are," she had said. "Not just what we can do, but how we think." The chamber grew silent as Zarak unveiled case studies that defied conventional understanding. The human approach to conflict resolution in the Nexus Corridor, their innovative solutions to ecological challenges, their ability to transform technological limitations into opportunities for growth. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood's military analysis became a pivotal moment. She had documented how human military doctrine had evolved from conquest to collaborative problem-solving. Strategies that prioritized prevention, rehabilitation, and mutual understanding over traditional conflict models. Elena Martinez's human rights work provided another layer of complexity. Documentation of how humans had consistently worked to elevate the status of marginalized populations, to create systems of mutual respect and understanding. "They are not a threat," Zarak proclaimed. "They are the next stage of galactic evolution." The conservative diplomats pushed back. Centuries of established thinking cannot be dismantled easily. They argued about security protocols, about the risks of introducing such an unpredictable species into the carefully maintained galactic balance. But something had changed. The younger diplomats, those who had seen the Nexus Corridor resolution, began to listen. They saw possibility where their elders saw only threat. Dr. Marcus Chen's quantum communication models were presented. Technological innovations that demonstrated how human thinking could transform fundamental understanding of communication, of intelligence itself. Zarak knew the stakes. This was more than a diplomatic recommendation. This was a challenge to the entire framework of galactic interaction. As the presentation concluded, the chamber was divided. But division was progress. The monolithic agreement that had defined the concordance for millennia had been fractured. Chancellor Vexna approached Zarak after the presentation. "You risk everything," the elder diplomat warned. Zarak's response was simple. "Some risks are worth taking." The diplomatic rebellion had begun, and humanity was its catalyst. The Galactic Concordance Hearing Chamber was a marvel of architectural complexity. Suspended in the void of deep space, its translucent walls allowed delegates to see the infinite darkness beyond. A constant reminder of the universe's vastness and the fragility of civilizational connections. Zarak stood at the center of this cosmic arena, with Dr. Emily Rodriguez beside them. The entire known galaxy watched through quantum communication networks. This was more than a hearing. This was a defining moment for human existence. Conservative diplomatic factions had marshaled every possible argument against human integration. Security risks, technological unpredictability, cultural incompatibility. Each point was a weapon designed to maintain the status quo. Humanity represents an unprecedented destabilizing force, argued diplomat Krelix, a crystalline being whose multifaceted form shifted with each accusatory statement. Their history is marked by conflict. Their technological development is erratic. Their social structures are fundamentally chaotic. Emily Rodriguez listened carefully. When her turn came, she would dismantle each argument not with defensive rhetoric, but with a comprehensive demonstration of human potential. Zarak had prepared meticulously. The diplomatic dossier was more than a collection of data points. It was a living narrative of human capability. Case studies from every conceivable field demonstrated humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. The first challenge came from the Security Council. They presented a holographic simulation of potential human technological expansion, worst-case scenarios of conflict, of uncontrolled growth, of potential galactic disruption. Emily stepped forward. Instead of arguing, she began to rewrite the simulation in real time. Her fingers danced across a quantum interface, demonstrating how human creativity could transform potential conflict into collaborative opportunity. Where the simulation showed potential destruction, she introduced adaptive solutions. Where conflict seemed inevitable, she revealed pathways of mutual understanding. The chamber fell silent. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood presented military analysis that redefined the concept of strategic thinking. Human military doctrine was not about conquest, but about prevention, about creating systems that made conflict unnecessary. Dr. Marcus Chen unveiled communication technologies that challenged fundamental understanding of information transfer, quantum entanglement protocols that emerged from human innovative thinking. Elena Martinez presented a comprehensive human rights framework that could be applied across different species and civilizational structures, a model of social organization that prioritized mutual understanding over hierarchical control. Dr. Kwame Osi demonstrated linguistic technologies that could bridge not just communication barriers, but fundamental differences in perception and consciousness. The hearing became something more than a diplomatic assessment. It was a collective reimagining of what intelligent life could be. Zarak's final argument was the most profound. Humanity is not a threat to be contained, they proclaimed. Humanity is the next stage of galactic evolution. The conservative factions pushed back hard. Centuries of established thinking do not crumble easily. They argued about risks, about the potential for chaos, about the dangers of introducing such an unpredictable species into the carefully maintained galactic balance. But something had changed. The younger diplomats, those who had witnessed the Nexus Corridor resolution, began to see possibility where their elders saw only threat. As the hearing approached its final moments, the chamber was divided. But division was progress. The monolithic agreement that had defined the concordance for millennia had been fractured. Emily Rodriguez stood silent, a quiet embodiment of human potential. Not arguing, simply existing, demonstrating through presence what words could never fully capture. The universe held its breath. The decision came not with fanfare, but with a quiet shift in the universe's fundamental understanding. Humanity was not just accepted into the galactic concordance. They became its catalyst for transformation. Zarak stood on the observation deck of the celestial horizon, watching as the first human diplomatic vessels prepared for their inaugural interstellar missions. Dr. Emily Rodriguez stood beside them, a symbol of the bridge between two civilizational paradigms. "We're not here to conquer," Emily explained, her voice calm and resolute. "We're here to connect." The aftermath of the hearing had been unprecedented. Instead of a simple integration, humanity had fundamentally reshaped the entire concept of galactic cooperation. The concordance's rigid structures began to evolve, becoming more adaptive, more responsive to the complexity of intelligent life. Dr. Marcus Chen's communication protocols became the new standard for interspecies dialogue. No longer were diplomatic exchanges mere information transfers. They became living conversations, dynamic and responsive to emotional and cultural nuance. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood's collaborative defense strategies revolutionized how civilizations approached conflict resolution. Military thinking transformed from preparation for war to active prevention of systemic challenges. Belina Martinez's human rights frameworks became a universal template. Species that had existed in isolation for millennia began to develop more inclusive, more empathetic societal structures. The quantum communication networks developed by human scientists created connections that transcended traditional barriers of language, biology, and perception. Zarak reflected on the journey. What had begun as a routine diplomatic mission had become a fundamental reimagining of galactic potential. "We're not special," Emily would often say. "We're just willing to see things differently." The first human diplomatic corps was a testament to that philosophy. Composed of scientists, artists, diplomats, and thinkers from every background, they approached their mission with a unique blend of humility and audacity. Their first international missions defied every existing protocol. Where previous diplomatic envoys had approached new civilizations with caution and rigid methodology, humans brought curiosity, compassion, a genuine desire to understand. Dr. Kwame Osei's linguistic technologies allowed for unprecedented levels of communication. But more than translation, they created true understanding, emotional resonance that went beyond mere words. The conservative factions of the concordance had not disappeared. They had transformed. Younger diplomats, inspired by the human approach, began to see possibility where their predecessors had seen only threat. Zarak and Emily represented this new paradigm, not as leaders, but as bridges, as living examples of how different perspectives could create something entirely new. "The universe is bigger than any single way of thinking," Emily would often say. And now, the galaxy was beginning to understand that truth. Humanity's integration was not an endpoint. It was a beginning. New scientific collaborations emerged. Species that had existed in isolation for millennia began to share knowledge, to create together. The concept of competition transformed into a model of mutual growth. On the celestial horizon, Zarak looked at the holographic display of human progress. Not a linear trajectory, but a complex, beautiful web of possibility. The quantum communication network pulsed with a new kind of energy. Not the cold, calculated exchanges of the past, but something more alive, more dynamic. Emily Rodriguez smiled. "We're just getting started," she said. and the universe listened.